Mr. Bledsoe.
It should be. It's populating. Everything's connected. Oh, just in time. Just in time.
Boom.
Dude, I just started the live stream. We're like, we're going to just start without Ilan.
Sneaking in.
There we go.
And the problem is Guy and I cannot have a conversation that should not be recorded. So we're sitting there trying not to say something. And then we start to say something. We're like, oh, hang on to that.
Hold that thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, no. Leave that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
That's where we're at.
Beautiful. We're here.
All right. So for those that don't know who you two guys are, well, I'll say this. I've known Guy for a while. I've done many shows with him. And every time I do a show, I get amazing feedback. And it's always one of my favorite conversations to have. So it's always a joy to bring him on. And sometimes I wonder, like, oh, if I brought him on as much as I really wanted to, people they're like, what is going on?
If you brought me on as much as you really want me to, we'd have to change the name to
it'd be our
Mike
show.
Bledsoe and Guy Ferdman, Strong Coach, United, All-Stars from Galactic 5-dimensional space, and that'd be the show.
Hilarious.
So we're bringing your brother on for the first time.
Yeah, as a buffer to keep us in line.
Yeah. Is that what this is? Is that
no? Probably not. Elon's as crazy as we are.
I got a feeling it's gonna we're gonna spiral out of control. So you guys run Satori Prime. Let's let Ilan talk since he hasn't been on the show before. Quick, like 30-second. Why do people love you?
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you for having me. Why do people listen to us? I think we take a lot of the woo from the spiritual mysticism, energy healing space and make it incredibly practical so that whether you're, some Joe off the street, you run a huge company, whatever it is, these are just tools that we've experienced and learned. Guy and I have spent over $1 million in our education over the since 2003, basically. Mentors, coaches, seminars, healers, experiences, etc. And we just, I think, boil it down to its essence where people can get the most value from it.
Yeah. So I think as in the first 20 seconds of your explanation, I go, oh, that's why we hang out. That's why we get along, is bringing that practical application of things that seem like magic. A lot of times people just call something spiritual or magical when they don't understand how it works. And then guys like yourself, as you started learning how things work, you're like, it's not really magic. It's just how things are. It's an obvious thing.
The thin line between magic and science, and that thin line is whether it's quantifiable. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think about so many discoveries we have, things we do scientifically, quantum physics, it's all really magic. It's just we can apply mathematics to it and measure it in some way. And that's really the only difference between what people, I think, perceive as magic or science.
Yeah. And you two guys are, you come across to me as people who could do anything. Like if you want to go into a different field, if you want to go make, tens of millions of dollars or whatever, you could run any kind of business and do that. But you chose, you really follow your passion and chose to help people through the path that you guys have gone down. So
my 8.5-year-old son just this morning goes to me. He goes, Abba, he calls me Abba, which is Hebrew for dad. He goes, Abba, if you weren't doing coaching for Satori Prime, what else would you do? And it took me all of 1 nanosecond to go like, there's nothing else that I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. What has been, all right. So Guy, you're in basically San Diego, we'll call it. And in a town outside San Diego. Ilan, you're in New York. Y'all are having very different experiences. You grew up in New York, right? For the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
And so I'm curious as to Ilan's experience. I'm more familiar with the West Coast and what's happening with this quarantine. How long you been in quarantine? What's the process been like for you?
So we self quarantined probably like a week, maybe a week and a half before everyone else. The school shut down and things like that. We were already locked in and kind of we're only going to go out for absolute necessity. I live outside of New York City, so I'm kind of luckier in that sense. I have a backyard. We have a bigger house. We're not like on top of each other. I will say though, wisely, we decided to start a kitchen construction project at the end of February. So we don't have a finished kitchen. Our contractor's brother-in-law got sick and sister got sick. So like now they can't even come to the house. New York has laws where like they can't even bring truck. Like if they catch a worker truck on the street, whatever, they can find them. So I have no idea when our kitchen will be done. So we've been living in the basement.
Whoa.
Yeah, so it's been, we got thrown a little curveball as we went into this whole thing.
And to those of you guys living on the West Coast, a basement is a floor in a house that's underground. Because they don't know what a basement is.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
true.
So luckily we have a finished basement, but we've basically been living like, it's like a New York City apartment, I guess, in our basement. And so that's what we've been doing. But I have to say, like, I said this to my mentor yesterday, and I don't mean this in like a braggy way, but like, I actually feel really good. And it's almost like part of me feels ashamed to feel as good as I do, given the circumstances of what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's not to say like, do I have sadness and concern and worry and frustration? Yes, like everybody else. And there's a lot of really cool things that happen either at my house, like spending time with family and like being in a basement where we're like closer together and doing all the, I don't know. It's like, I said this on a podcast earlier. I feel like we're all going to look back at these little things, a year or two or whatever from now when we're out of this and go like, do you remember how nice it was when we did this? And I just hope that we get to keep some of the things that have really lit us up over this Corona life, as I like to call it.
Yeah, I've had that experience. Things got simple, really quick, really
slower.
Quick. Yeah,
it's nice.
Doesn't that just feel good though? It's like we talk about this a lot in our coaching, but it's like, can you free yourself of the need to achieve in order to feel good about yourself, like in order to feel a connection and love and support and safety, because those things are things you develop within yourself and then they get expressed outside of yourself. Most people are trying to change their outside world to change their inside world. Yeah. So it's like this, if there's a gift that anything this has given is like, hey, simplify, minimize, it's funny. Like my wife and I, we want a large property. We want to buy like, 48 acres, something like that. But we actually want to build like small container homes. Mm-hmm. But like, I want to build like a mansion container home. I know it's like ironic. I want to build a big, tiny home.
There's a bar in Austin, Texas that's made up out of containers. You could probably go get some inspiration there. Yeah.
I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I do. And because I'm fascinated by it, because oftentimes it's like the use of space, how it gets implemented there is very attractive to me. And I think what I love about this time right now is like, it's kind of like forced minimalism for a lot of people. Yeah. It's almost like, hey, look, you don't need a lot. You really don't. You don't need to go out there and just buy shit and be a consumer for no reason. The stuff doesn't make you feel good anyway. If anything, it's like now you're not consuming so much. Maybe you feel better. Maybe take a look at that. Or like you're actually, been redefining connection right now is really important. Like a lot of people think they need people around them, but then they have people around them, they feel isolated anyway. It's like, is that really connection because you have more quantity of physicalness around you? Or were you just misinterpreting how you got to receive connection in the first place? Again, that's something that comes inside. You get to give to yourself first, and then you get to share that expression with other people. So it really has kind of like flipped priorities on its head. And I think the longer we stay in this, the better for that reason, in terms of people viewing priorities really, really different. I say this all the time. I'm like, I really, and I am saying this with understanding that there's a lot of people going through very difficult situations, certainly have maybe like really difficult things happening at home as well. But my personal hope is that it doesn't end quick. I actually hope that we stay in this for a few months. It'll challenge people in different ways that I think are important if we want to make the type of changes that I hope that we ultimately get to see out of the situation.
Yeah, I'm hearing stories of domestic violence being higher, suicide higher, and
Divorce
it's interesting
at an
because
all-time high.
What is?
divorce,
Divorce, like
divorces,
divorce attorneys are booming.
yeah, and it's really. I'm with you guys. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing more suicides, more domestic violence, and someone would go, "Oh, you want to have? Does that mean you want to have more of that?" And the answer is, absolutely not. And the violence was there, the depression was there, and now I've been talking about this experience as something that's just speeding everything that already was up. The timeline just fucking jumped, and it is interesting that under this pressure cooker, people are probably leaving marriages that they should have left. They would have left years ago had they had been present to what was going on,
right?
Or they're divorcing because they need to escape and they don't know how to cope and have a good conversation.
I don't even know it's that they weren't present to it. I think that they just weren't honest with themselves and stuck their head in the sand. And there's no sand, quote unquote, to stick your head in right now.
That's true.
Right? Like whatever your circumstance is, it's there and you're there. And like all the other distractions that you've used as coping mechanisms or things to like not look at this thing are gone, basically gone. So it's like, there you turn, there you are, there she is, there he is. It's like, but here's the funny part. I was thinking about this, like, so now people are inside and they're like, I hate you. I want a divorce, right? And that sucks, but that's kind of always been there. What's the game plan? Like, where do you go? You're in the same house. You're stuck. Like,
yeah, I know a guy who, you guys may know him, who was leaving a relationship when this all went down. I actually know two people. I know a guy and I know a girl, different situations. They were leaving a relationship when this is all going down. They're living together. And now pressure, like there's just, there was not another option where like they leave and go to a hotel for a few days, but that's not working. You're not going to go live in a hotel right now.
I have a solution. This is easy. Home Depot is still essential. It's open. You go buy some sheetrock and you use Donald Trump's solution. You build a fucking wall. and that's that. I mean, like you have it's like those old, like in 1980s. Don't forget
the barbed wire. You need barbed wire.
For building a moat, you get a fucking alligator. Yeah, like so funny. But yeah, it's you could do it. But I get that. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are so many crazy stories. I mean, look, there's families that don't spend time together, kids that don't want to be around their parents. Like, I get all that, but like, there are your problems that you never face. And I agree with you 100%. This is like an accelerated timeline type of situation. And it doesn't even matter if you've done the work, like spiritually, physically, emotionally, this is causing so much upheaval that I have to I don't want to say manage, but like be with. Like this stuff might've taken me years, what's happening within days or weeks right now.
Yeah. What have you guys experienced for yourselves as far as things that have been illuminated that you didn't notice before, but being put in this situation, you now get to see?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, so I'll just preface this by saying that the kind of work that we're doing internally for ourselves and with our clients is, instead of trying to understand. So Guy and I played the mindset game since 2003. We were in that world, steeped in it, and it got to a point where I just got sick of looking at the same patterns over and over and over. We looked for new methodologies, new mentors, new technology, basically.
Can you explain to people patterns, right? In the same patterns,
sure.
So, an example of that.
Yeah. So pattern is for me, a big one is the story that got created when I was very, very young. I had a story. My parents left. I made it mean that I'm a loser. And then I've
I had a
lived.
loser story too.
There you go.
Oh my
That's how
gosh.
you get along.
When this is all over, guys, you can start a group, you can support each other.
We can kumbaya together.
I got the domain picked out.
That's it.
So, I'm a loser showed up a lot because it's like it shows up in relationships when a relationship fails. It shows up in sports. It shows up in school. It shows up in relationships. It shows up in my health. And it was just this ongoing thing. And like I would hit this wall, say in business, and the thing would always lead back to that same core story. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so nauseated by looking at the same moment in my life like 1,000 times. I was 30 at the time and I'm going, dude, if I do this for like the next 70 years, are you kidding me? Like, this is what I got to deal with every time. Oh, I'm a loser. Okay, let's look at the same scenario again. Like, I was like, oh, enough. So, and look, I'm not taking anything away from that work. That work is incredibly valuable. Like, if that's what you're doing, it is life-changing. I mean, it is. And I was just like, okay, there's got to be something else. So that's when we really started to leave the mind and the understanding and the reframing and the figuring it out. And we're like introduced to this whole internal system that prods and pokes and creates little contractions and bubbles and holds things inside. And what I started to see is that internally there were different parts that got trapped in time. So it wasn't just that Ilan at like 3.5 that had that moment, but there's like a lot of different parts that got trapped in time and they live inside and they are the ones that are responding to the external environment before the mind comes. So say there's that like I'm a loser part, right? So he actually lives, I don't know if people can see this on camera, he lives here from me.
He's right here behind rib number 3.
It's near the liver.
Yeah, he's like
the liver.
Right side of the solar plexus. And he like when he gets really scared or really activated, he'll like tighten really hard. And that's what sends a message to my brain to go, holy crap, shit's about to go down. Like, this is bad. We got to fix this. And then the doer just gets online. It's like, all right, well, you don't have to feel that. I promise. Like I told you, you're never going to feel like a loser. And it just does its thing. So now, before that happens, we've created technology that actually or been shown technology that we can heal that part and let that part feel safer to feel I'm a loser, for example. Because I'm a loser was this DEFCON 11, like this is really bad, we got to fix this. So now with that work, it's made everything because the world is quieter, it's made being with those different aspects so much easier. And so one of the things that's really become pronounced to me is safety. Like the part of me that doesn't feel safe. And it could be like uncertainty around my business. And then there's a freak out inside of like, oh my God, how are we going to survive? What about our family? And so where the old part used to go is having to figure out how to solve that external problem, right? Like, how am I going to fix all of this? What's really cool is no one knows the future. No one knows the doors that we're walking out of. No one even knows what's going to happen a week from now. And so the part that's trying to quantify and figure out at a loss, he's like, I got nothing because I don't know where it's going to go. And so I'm left with a lot more fear basically in the system. And that's what's been really beautiful is to go and love the parts of me that are scared out of their goddamn minds and let them feel like it's okay to be that scared. And what happens is they relax, not from understanding, not from figuring stuff out, just from them knowing that I'm there and it's okay for them to process the full gamut of the human emotional scale. You know, everyone wants to be happy all the time, but it's happy is one note. There's despair and terror and trauma and sadness and frustration and anger. Like, we're the keyboard of all of these things. And I think we're just expanding, a guy and I like looking to expand where we can get the entire keyboard to play.
Or, and I've said, everyone's playing the entire keyboard. I don't know if everyone's appreciating every key, so it's like,
or maybe even can hear it.
Yeah.
It's like the key is being played, but being tone deaf.
Totally.
Yeah. I mean, I think for most men, right, I think we've talked about this before. It's like the human experience, like it's either joy or anger. And it's like everything else kind of gets suppressed, or you kind of have, like we're talking about, these patterns of protectors that protect you from really experiencing those things fully, but then you're not really experiencing humanity fully. That creates a lot of misalignment, actions that you start taking to try to get things so you don't really have to feel those things, but it never quite works. And you just end up in these loops throughout your entire life. And it's like, I don't know about you guys, but like I get, like Ilan said, I'm tired of some of those loops happening over and over again. And what I have found is most of personal development is either managing those loops or trying to create another story, so that like when the loop is happening, it's like, oh, divert attention over here and like, live from this story, but it's not ever really fully being with that experience in a way that allows for you to, I mean, how can you gain safety over something that you've never fully experienced?
Yeah.
If there's an emotion within you that you're not going to fully experience, or even a thing that happens in your life that you're not fully experiencing. People know this with grief. Like if you don't fully experience grief, like someone's death or someone leaving or getting bereavements, right? Like you never quite get over that thing. That's probably like one of the most challenging thing that I've seen clients that deal with, that have like a death of a parent that they've never said everything to. It's like you just, the grieving doesn't complete and you just keep going through it. If they would be courageous enough to go through the grieving process fully, they'd be free of it too. And so it's like, it's kind of like that over and over again. It's like we're grieving ourselves, we're grieving our emotions, we're grieving our experiences. And the more that you're willing to like lean into like what Ilan described as fear, like, okay, cool. If you understand that fear is a feedback system that our biomechanical suit is using to show us something, you also know that fear is an incredible source for creativity. Like right now has been a really creative time. I imagine not just for myself, but people, there's a ton of stuff flowing through me. I'm just kind of sitting with, what's in alignment to share. What do I feel like I fully embodied, so I'm not out of alignment sharing those things. There's a lot of stuff that's coming through that I don't know what that means yet. We'll figure it out in a few months. Yeah. So.
Yeah. What do you, and talking about fear, can you talk about like a healthy experience of fear, an unhealthy experience of fear? I've, over the last month, I actually got on the phone with Guy at one point. I was like, my system was just like,
sure.
I was just high. I was like at a high pitch, and I was just going, okay, because there's just so much different information coming in and all this. And so looking back on it, it's like, did I respond appropriately? Did I respond? Did I react? All these types of things. What, in your view, is a healthy response to fear? How do we, because people, I imagine, are experiencing it in waves. One day it's fine. You get a phone call from somebody and they've got some news that gets you fired up. It all started off with, all right, you're going to get this virus and you probably die, to now they're going to force you to get a vaccine that's not been tested appropriately. And people are freaking out about that. I've had my own concerns. What goes from like a healthy fear or concern to something that's not useful or something that's holding us back?
Well, let's use that experience with you, I think, as a good example, right? So when everything started shifting very quickly, and it's funny, we reached out when we were both like at the fever pitch of fear for each other, because like a lot of different, like you said, pieces of information started coming through. And it wasn't like I wasn't afraid about what was coming. It like sobered me that it actually was coming.
Mm-hmm.
When we were watching it on the news and it was happening in China and then like moving across, it's like, okay, that's a fucked up movie, but it's still a movie. And then it becomes your life and you're like, the system is like, whoa, you're telling me tomorrow I can't get out of my house? Like, freedoms get lost very quickly. There's a lot of stuff like that. But for me, all fear is inherently healthy. Ultimately, it is a few things. Number one, where are you viewing the fear from? And are you going along for the ride with it? Right. So like we all have thoughts in our head, and there's two different ways to perceive thoughts. There's I'm having a thought, and I got to go and chase it and figure it out and do all the things that people normally do when they have a thought, especially ones that scare them. Or I can be like a passive observer viewing something thinking, and I'm just viewing something thinking. Like if I'm watching Michael talk about thoughts that he's having, I'm aware that I'm watching Michael talk about thoughts that he's having. The reality is within ourselves, it's the same thing. There's something having thoughts and we're the ones viewing it, but oftentimes we gets involved in that game and plays the game. So if you're passively observing, you're going to probably learn a lot about fear itself as like a mechanism of things, because you're not chasing it. You're not getting on what like we call like the bus ride, right? Like you can see the bus, but you don't have to get on the ride, don't have to go on the bus to go along for the ride. The second thing is when you were afraid, you reached out for support.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal. And most of us, we get, it's like fear comes along with shame and guilt. We don't want to show that we're afraid because we've been told that fear is no good. You got to be strong. You got to figure it out. And you got to like might is right. So it's like power is more important right now than vulnerability. And that's the irony and the paradox of things is that like vulnerability is power. It's like, if you don't have vulnerability with power, then you actually don't have power. And so it's like reaching out for that support and saying, hey, look, I could use some reflection. Or honestly, what I think most people miss, it's so simple. We do a really simple exercise. I won't talk about it too much here. We call them minis. And it really is just providing support through presence. Like most of the trauma that even the one Ilan mentioned, I'm sure you can talk about your loser story. I could talk about why I think I'm fucking retarded. Like I get all those kind of things. But in those situations, sorry for the euphemism, bad now, but when I was a kid, it wasn't. Like all those stories, if you really think about what did the little boy, little girl need when they were being traumatized, is they really wanted an attuned presence from mom and dad. They didn't need a solution. They just needed to feel that mom and dad were there and that safety is there. They can downregulate the nervous system. Ooh, they open up to experience. Then it's okay to experience what they're experiencing. The energy flows through the body, liberates. You had an experience, but you're afraid of it. You're not walking around like it's now clamped onto you and you got to walk around with it. So as adults, that doesn't change. What worked as a child works as an adult. Most of our parents didn't have attunement, the presence, education, or experiences to know how to do that. So it really is on each one of us to, first of all, give that to ourselves, that level of attunement, presence, and attention when we're going through difficult, quote unquote, difficult experiences. And the second thing is find people who can really offer you presence when you're going through those experiences. It's extraordinarily healing for the other person, for both people, really. And it's so simple. And that's why a lot of people miss it. It's like really all you want is presence right now.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to that real quick?
Sure.
Because I think now is a really good time to have this conversation around fear. Every single human on planet Earth has been thrown into an environment that is unknown. As soon as we are put in an environment of unknown, our fear kicks in. That's what it does, right? Because our mind, the brain, is a predictive mechanism. So it is constantly trying to predict the future you are walking into. That's why you have like a choose your own adventure movie in your head. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this in my business. And if this happens, and I'm going to do this. But we're at this point right now where it's like the screen has gone black. And that part that wants to predict can't, because it's like, I don't know what happens past this move.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the exact words that were coming out of my mouth when I started making decisions around, okay, looks like, I'm about to get on a plane. Oh, wait, that country's not going to let me in. That's never happened before.
Yeah.
Oh, they're talking about locking things down. Oh, they're locking things down in other countries. Oh, we're right behind them. I've never seen this before. So I started going into that. That's where I was making a lot of decisions from. I go, oh, I've never seen this before. I need to take extra precautions.
That's it.
And that's why all the toilet paper ran out.
So this is what I kind of want to point to, because this is a really, really interesting. It's like, I'll just say this before. The actions you take are irrelevant. It's the energy behind the action that creates the end result. If we are in a fear state, and when we're in fear state, we have certain protective strategies and patterns and techniques that we've all developed that make us feel better in the moment. Whatever that is for you. So there's people who like avoid, right? They're like the people who kind of like stick their hand in the sand and they're like,
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with this. There's other people who get like super, super anxious about what's happening. It's like, I gotta know. There's people that hoard. Because that, again, like we're looking for safety, right? There's people who are just information junkies right now. It's like information is going to make me feel safer. And they're just
I got a buddy he's staying up till 3 or 4 o'clock every morning.
Right?
And when I hang out with him, he's just, I'll be like, what do you think about this? And then he's able to lay out the whole thing. I was like, should I be worried about this? He's actually a wealth of information. I'm going, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like you actually did all this crazy research.
That makes him feel safer.
And he'll admit it. There's nothing. Yeah. And he's a bit of hypochondriac too. He's like terrified of getting, I don't want to get the COVID.
Perfect storm. So it's like, we all have these things that we do. The part that I think is so interesting, it's like people's patterns are on loudspeaker. It's like the second I mention that, you're like, oh, my buddy's this. I think we're all in some sort of WhatsApp group, and you can literally watch in the WhatsApp group who's running what pattern. There's the ones that just like sending memes. They're like, I don't give a shit about anything that's happening. The one that's like sending article after article and video after video. You're like, it's interesting to watch as we all do this. Yeah. So what I would offer is like, if we act from fear, if we get on that bus and ride the fear bus, and we act from that place and we let the pattern dictate the next action, what that actually does is it puts us in this loop. Because now the energy behind the action is fear, which then creates more some sort of circumstance where fear is going to loop back in. And so you put yourself on this like fear cycle, which is not actually like this. Fear is one of those things that it's like a toilet bowl. It just like gets down and you get to this place. You're like, holy fuck, like what is happening in my life?
Yeah.
So just knowing that, like even having that awareness, go like, oh, am I just reacting out of fear to just make myself feel okay in the moment? And then having that moment of pause where like for 10 seconds, you just go internal and just sit with the part of you that is freaking the fuck out right now. And just be with it. Be like, okay, I'm freaking the fuck out right now. And you'll notice that in 10 seconds, 30 seconds, like it's the tension and the stress and all that stuff kind of like, it does what it does and it will start to dissipate. If it doesn't take 30 seconds, it'll take 2 minutes. And then allow that to just process through. And now from that calmer state, now choose your next action. And that gets you out of that fear loop, quote unquote, and into just a new pathway. And that doesn't mean that fear won't show up. It's just you're not choosing from fear and creating more and more and more of that in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed myself. I think my the virus never really scared me that much. It was more of like how are like the socioeconomic impacts and how are people going to respond.
Yeah.
And I in the military, there's a saying of, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of training that you receive. And so
I love that. I've never heard that.
Yeah, people, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people like to fantasize about, how I would behave. They want to be Bruce Willis or something. And, if shit hit the fan, I'd be like that. I'm like, no, you wouldn't. You would not be like that. Because you've never been like that. You think that when shit hits the fan, that's how you're going to be.
Yeah.
No. So
you've never been like that, John.
Fucking John, man. No, anyway, so like that's one thing I've witnessed in this whole situation is there's this unknown thing that pops up, and it was interesting to watch myself and recognize, oh yeah, like stress hit me because my lifestyle, which is basically traveling around the world, and there was no plans of settling down for like 2 years in my mind. I was like, I'm not settling down anytime soon.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, sit your ass down. I go, and that triggered a pattern of like for me, like, don't tell me what to do.
Yes.
It's like,
I have a
you're
strong
trying
one
to
of those
fucking
too.
control me. I will. And then I'm like, actually, there's nothing I can do. So I did the next best thing is I drove to Utah. I just don't want to be in the city. So, but anyway, and I watched myself and I go, wow, did I just fall to my level of training? And it's a military thing. And then everything I was doing was like, I was doing tons of risk assessment. I was going, where's the best place to be if shit really hit the fan? I've never seen this before. I was playing out scenarios, not playing out scenarios of like, oh my, it's funny because I have a couple friends. I don't think they can, I'm actually being really nice by saying, I think they don't really hear everything that I'm saying. Like they have their filter. I mean, we all have our filters. Some are heavier than others.
For sure.
But like I have one friend who's like, you were really freaking out. I was like, I was actually just, energetically, I don't feel like it was like a freak out about what was going on. It was more of like ooh, I've never seen this before. And the way I freak out is to start doing. It is.
Yes.
Like, so maybe it was a freak out, but like, maybe she could see something I wasn't saying as well, but I was like, shit, man. So I was like, oh, I started doing risk assessments and I go, okay, I got to look out for this. All right. Food, supply chain. Okay. If that breaks down, what do I need to do? So I made sure I had that. Okay. If shit really hit the fan, I need to be able to be away from dense population. So I did that. So it's like, I played all these things. I'm like, okay, worst case scenario, this is what I do. And then as I was in the middle of this, I'm driving from California to Utah. And I go, this is hilarious. This is definitely something like a former military prepper mindset would do. And I was like, I literally fell to the level of my training.
Absolutely.
Like, literally, like this is what you do, and this is what I was taught when I was growing up. This is very like military-esque. Like, yeah, I was like, yeah, I've got guns and ammo, and food and this and that. I was like, it's like no matter what hits me, I don't have a hazmat suit. That's the only thing I don't have, and I got rid of that years ago. Now I'm regretting it. I should have had that hazmat suit.
Michael calls me. He goes, I'm going to a ranch. They got cattle. We can eat for 10 years. I'm like, okay. Drop me a pin.
I've never heard that line before. And you are absolutely dead on. Like you fell to the level of your training and that's what took over. It's like threat response went high and then you went to your training. It's interesting because I'm listening and I'm going, wow, Guy and I too, because our training is different, right? Like our training is go internal, go internal, go internal. So everything inside of me, as all this stuff is happening, everything's like, go sit. Like every time I have a moment, it's like, go sit. That's it. That's all I keep hearing. It's not like, go get guns, go do this, go. It's just like, go sit. Yeah. So it's interesting that I've never thought of it. And then look, there's people right now where they're training, quote unquote, to deal with this stuff is what? Alcohol, drugs,
totally,
fear and violence.
You know, for people who are like exercise is coping, they are freaking out right now. Like,
I know,
can't go to the gym, can't get this, can't get that. And you could just watch, they're like convulsing on the inside. Check
this out. This is a cool stat. Talking about exercise, right? This will show you. And my buddy was telling me about this, and I've been tied into the CrossFit community for a long time, and they're neurotic in their own way.
Absolutely.
And it's beautiful. And so nobody can go do CrossFit right now. Like to do CrossFit, you need, to do it the way people want to do it, they have to have 20 different pieces of equipment, and they need really loud Linkin Park playing in the background, and they need to beat somebody. Some motherfucker needs to be a loser so I can be a winner. and, you know, all those things. And so that just got fucking ripped away. It's not about the workouts. So, but the workouts is what everything revolves around. So on iTunes, there was a new record broken for movies downloaded. And it was the CrossFit Games documentary. So all these CrossFitters, fucking broke like a world record. All these CrossFitters sitting at home and just, and I know the guys who created the documentary. I'm like, I haven't talked to them. I need to reach out. Probably just fucking raking it in right now. Wow. But it didn't, like, that didn't even cross my mind. And then I'm hanging out with a buddy here in Utah who he ran CrossFit competitions for years. And he's like, dude, check out what just happened. He's like, they're going nuts. Like, they're sitting at home and they need to like get that fix somehow. I was like, dude, you're right. That's nuts. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, exercise for a lot of people. When we do our training with people through, when we get into certain levels of training, I tell people they're not allowed to exercise. Like, you're not going to exercise for 6 days, and fucking just kind of watch the people.
Why do you do that? I'm just curious.
Because it could be an escape for. Like,
I see. I see. Like, while you're in a session for like spiritual and personal development stuff.
Yeah, we're doing personal development stuff. I intentionally am like, all right, don't go for that run. You're gonna want to wake up early in the morning. That guy that was in the military. You wake up at 5 a.m. and go for that run. Don't do it.
Gotcha.
Come up here and we're gonna do some like really gentle movement.
Brilliant.
And what are we talking about? Fuck. People going.
People losing
they're coping. They're coping. Like, they feel a level of training, and like your level of training is to escape through movement. It's like, okay, I don't have to face this thought. I can just like, I have the feeling. I'm just gonna like get it out. Drinking. I mean, I think Guy was talking about drinking, smoking, all this stuff. Yeah, I've been telling people, I attract a certain niche, this certain niche in the fitness community where people are pretty friendly to cannabis. You know, a lot of people like to smoke and flow. And I'm like, dude, I love it. But don't do it every day, especially right now. It's like, now's not the time. Like, this is the time to be present with what's happening in the body.
I had a funny thought the other day. You know, Corona it's like a timeout for everyone, right? It's like someone came in and was like, everybody go to your room.
Human race, bad.
I don't even know if it's like bad. Just like, it was like, everyone go to your room. And it's like, if you send a kid today, like a teenager, to their room, right? They're like, fuck it, I don't care. I'll go to my room. I'm just gonna play video games. And so now we kind of went through the like first phase, which is people were just binging Netflix, drinking a shit ton of wine and beer and like all these, right? Just like, by the time I come out of this drunken stupor haze, like the world will be back to normal. And I think they're starting to come out of this place and going like, holy shit, like this is going to be going on for quite some time. This is not going to, people are coming to the grips with the fact that schools aren't going to be open now. And that's a reality that's hitting. Yeah. Like a lot of states have already declared like schools done for the year.
I've already started writing copy with my sister. She homeschools 5 children as a degree in education and psychology. I'm like, yeah, you should be teaching other people how to homeschool. She goes, I do that for free already. I go, okay, you're going to make money at this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just even not homeschooling, but like just for the next few months for parents to get tips on how to do this whole distance learning thing and like get some tips would be huge. But that's what people are coming to grips with. And I think what's going to happen is, and that's what Guy said, like, I think this will be a lot longer than people assume. We as a human, if this is what it's supposed to do, we got to get past that level of coping. We have to get to the place where people are actually dealing with, like you said, don't go to the gym for 6 days. And you kind of get that like itch. And then you realize like, why am I itching? Like starting to ask those kind of questions. I don't know that we're there yet. I think people like us are seeing this as an opportunity and we're already being in that conversation. But for the whatever other billions of people out there, I don't know that they've quite realized like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, this is going to roll in waves. Yeah,
Yes.
depending on where you're at, what level of training you had up to this point. Week one, I'm like, I think I was 2 or 3 days in. I'm going, there's so many fucking gifts. There's definitely waves of hitting. Where I'm like, oh shit, the reality. 1 weekend, I go, oh, I'm 1 week into something that I have no idea how long it's going to last. And I started I watched the stats, and I'm watching the stats, and I'm watching the stats, and I go, oh, this is getting worse and worse and worse. Now I'm watching the stats and I'm asking other questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, so let me ask you the question: Why even watch? Right, like that was predictable that the numbers were going to get into the millions, lots dead, and then I think it's fairly obvious, maybe not to everybody, but like that they're not testing. That if you have symptoms that even look like corona, they're going to put you in that thing. Like from what I understand, even with China, the numbers declined because they added a part to the definition that had to include that if you passed away from it, that you can only say it was a coronavirus thing if you actually had contact with somebody who had coronavirus. So if that definition isn't supplanted, even now I thought really interesting. We don't have to go down the big numbers rabbit hole, but like California, for instance, New York versus California. New York is seeing 14 times the death rate as California. Yeah. So they're like, okay, well, why is that? Well, Chinese and a lot of Asian countries travel to California as the #1 destination spot for people from Asia. They don't travel across the country for, obvious reasons. And so they are assuming now that they've already traced back that the coronavirus, when they thought it was a bad flu season, has really been here since the middle of November, that we actually went through our curve already when there was no definition, no panic, and it was just being treated like the flu or anything else, where New York is now seeing, the wave go across the country and they're being smashed by it. But because there's the hysteria of it, and that's why I think like this is what we always got to take into consideration. Like somebody posted yesterday that I know is in the medical field, that heart disease numbers, pneumonia numbers, and flu deaths are all down at the same time while coronavirus is going up. So it's like, are people dying from coronavirus, or is just because that's the lens that we're looking through right now, that the same diseases that were taking people out are now being redefined as coronavirus? This is true when there was polio. This is true when there was really any other pandemic. Because again, you give people a narrative. You assume right now if you have a cough or a sneeze, you're like, oh, the first thought is, fuck, do I have coronavirus? You're not going to be like, oh, okay, I just sniffed some pepper. Like it just changes the perspective. So I think that's what we always have to consider. And look, whatever it is that you're dealing with, I don't want to make it wrong. If you think this is like exactly what's going on, cool. Like that's your narrative, live in it and learn from it. If you're fucking aliens put this on the planet, cool, that's your narrative, like live in it, right? I don't really care. I think
I love the aliens. I love all the conspiracy theories. I have favorites. They're so much
into
fun.
It. I'm so into it, yeah, because it's like it's a more interesting narrative than most. And I gotta say that there is some really interesting things happening on the planet. But I remember 9/11. Oh, Ilan and I were you were in college, right, when that happened, bro?
Yeah, I was a sophomore.
I was right there. Like I watched that happen. So, but a horrible event. And I remember thinking, like, just like today, people look at millennials and they're like, oh, they're entitled and this and that. I remember them saying that about my generation too. Look at these fucking lazy bastards. And then like 9/11 happened and the best of humanity came out, and everyone in my generation was like, giving blood and helping and donating their time and volunteering. Everyone's like, oh my God, look at these children. So it's like, given the circumstance and opportunity right now, as far as I'm concerned, you're either digging yourself down a hole or you're learning how to climb out of it. That's pretty much it. And I do agree with Ilan. It's like, and kind of what you spoke about, what you're doing with your clients about, hey, don't do your coping mechanism. Slow down enough to see the pattern.
Yeah.
Because if you don't slow down, you're in the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the pattern, you're never going to get perspective on what it looks like to go through the pattern.
Yeah.
So now is this incredible opportunity to, every time we're feeling anxiety, every time we're feeling fear, every time we're looking at numbers, and it really is so alluring to get caught up in the collective fear. It's very easy to get hooked into that. And then that's the beauty. It's like, guys, and I'm not saying I'm a rock star at this, but I'm certainly rocking it, is like the outside world doesn't have to dictate your inside world.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and your inside world matters a lot more than what's happening in the outside world.
Yeah.
Right now, most of us, like, if you believe the conspiracy theories or you don't, like, we're getting a very gentle awakening, all told. This could have been so much worse, so much scarier. So, like, you're at home, you're probably with your families, you still have food, electricity's on. We can still talk on the internet and find out how other people feel about this stuff. Like, could have gone.
Armageddon is pretty fucking bougie, man.
Yeah, it's a bougie Armageddon. It's
Bougie-mageddon.
Yeah, I mean, even 20 years ago, no internet and something like this going down, like, most people would be beside themselves, you know? So
yeah,
I say we get real grateful for how this has happened, again, with the compassion of understanding that people are really suffering out there around this thing. And the reality is people are suffering every day.
Yeah.
This is just a magnified version of putting all that under a microscope and showing you that people are suffering. And it's good to know that people are suffering so we can be more compassionate about the suffering on our planet, period.
Yeah. As a culture, we're in a mental loop. It seems that repeating narrative every day we wake up. I'm in this again. I'm in this again. I'm in this again.
Yeah.
The numbers seem strange to me in regard to, how many people are dying from heart disease, the flu, all these numbers that are much bigger than COVID-19 coronavirus. And yet we're freaking out about the coronavirus. I think that it reminds me of, the mind latching onto something it's afraid of. For some reason, it latches onto that one thought. And it seems like, to me, all of society has latched onto this one story, and we're stuck in a loop. And, how long does it, as Ilan was talking about, how long does that spiral before, as a culture, how long does it spiral before people go, fuck it, I'm going to let it go.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm going to let this narrative go. And wow, life is going to be way better now that I let that go, because what was attached to that was all this other bullshit that was holding us back as an entire planet.
Yeah. That's, just ask yourself this question, is like, why am I watching the numbers? Why am I watching the news? And I love this, but I have to stay informed. Why?
Yeah.
Like no one can really give me that answer. Like, why? Because here's the thing. Unless you're out there physically, I'm not talking mentally, like spewing crap, physically out there, going to shift that conversation, whatever the conversation is. Like, now it's Corona, before it's the war in Afghanistan, then whatever it is. If you're not physically going out there to do something about it, what is the point of you knowing about it?
Yeah,
the next comment is like, well, if I'm at a dinner party and people are talking about it, then I want. Okay, so really, what you're saying is like, I don't want to feel stupid at a dinner party. And in order to not feel stupid at a dinner party, I'm going to watch this to educate myself so I can say something. But really what there is for you to deal with now is like, okay, so if we go under, there's this underlying feeling of like being stupid. And that's what you get to look at. So like right now, here's the thing. I believe that whatever's happening out there is happening out there. It's going to happen out there. Like, there are people doing the best that they know how. God bless all of them. Like, all the medical people that are out there, like, truly, God bless you and your families for just unreal work that's being done right now. Other than those people, like, your job is you internally right now. Like, you got put in a house with a family that maybe you haven't seen or connected with in a long time, and you don't know because it feels awkward and you're not really sure what to do. Get some new fucking tools on doing that. Instead of like focusing on numbers and like, what would it look like for me to actually be the dad that I always dreamed that I could be, or the husband or wife that I dreamed that I like? That you can do.
Yeah. The one of the things that's really come online for me is, and I think I was sharing this when you and I were on a phone call yesterday, is that I can visualize my future, or my desired future, we'll say that, much more clearly than I could have a month ago. This space has allowed me to really reflect on who and what am I going to be doing in the future? Who am I going to be doing in the future? Who am I going to be and what am I going to be doing in the future? And maybe who I'm going to be doing in the future. But
side hustle.
Yeah, I got, there's some DMs out there.
Hey girl, when we can finally touch each other, what do you say we get a coffee?
Yeah. So I really been able to get present with that, because I have been going along with what's been happening, and I recognize what I've gotten present to is this is the best time to do that work. This is the best time to do that inner work. This is such a gift. The days are, I've never had so many consecutive days. I'll say this, it's been years. It's been probably a decade or more since I've had consecutive days that are similar externally, right?
Wow.
And what that has given me is the ability to see the difference in my internal state of like, okay, it's not the outside world that's making me have a different experience every day. I'm having a very different experience every day because I'm having a very different experience every day. And it's cool to be able to witness the progress from day to day, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. On all these levels, I'm noticing more and more connection. That doesn't mean that every day I'm more connected to those things than I was the day before, but overall, there's this progress being made that I was not accessing before. And so I'm really looking at this as an opportunity for everybody. This is prime time for personal development. This is the best time. Look, you have more time to reflect. You have more time to work on yourself. For me, it's so fucking exciting that I get to emerge out of this, whether it be 2 weeks from now, 2 months, 2 years, however the fuck long this goes. I'm going to emerge out of this. I'm going to be in better shape. I've been more consistent in my training. I'm doing breath work. My meditation's on point. I've been focused on my business. I've been hyper focused on my clients and like showing them as much love as possible that they can receive. And there's all these things happening. And for some reason, I ended up quarantined with my ex-wife. So now we get the opportunity to work on things on that relationship. And she's already pointed out things. It's like, in your next relationship, you might want to look at.
Wow. That's amazing that you guys have that. Wow.
So for me, it's really, really, really exciting. And being able to witness the progress from day to day. And it's just, I want to encourage other people. This is the time you can do this work. And I think you were saying there's tools available, and that's what all of us do. Yeah. We're all disseminating these tools. So if you're going, fuck, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to get these tools they're talking about. Yeah. Just go to their website,
It's like, look, I mean, relationships, right? So it's like, I saw the statistic yesterday about how much divorce like is through the roof right now. And like all these attorneys are getting calls. I'm like, I sent Guy and Mandy this message. I was like, what if we actually created, this was just like an idea that came through. Can my relationship survive Corona? Like a little bit of a quiz of like how people are interacting with those, and just some basic tools that I think the three of us probably take for granted of like how we operate inside of relationships, like personal responsibility, like having an opportunity to have conversations with people in a way that information is received, like things that we just know to do because we've trained ourselves to do that. We were born this way.
No.
Like, can you imagine what a gift that would be for people who are at home now with their spouses, with their kids? We're all under a great deal of stress right now. Like all of us. I don't care what, like I feel really good, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a tremendous amount of stress. I went to Home Depot today because like we're in this construction that I mentioned, and they weren't willing to hold the stuff that I'd ordered indefinitely. So like I had
Admit
to
it,
do
Ilan,
that.
you wanted to buy sheetrock because you got to build a wall at home.
And like just being outside and watching people behave right now in stores, in parking lots, you could feel like there's this look that people have in their eyes right now
Yeah.
when they're walking by you, and they're like, it's this uncertainty of like, do you fucking have it? Are you gonna fucking pass this on to me? Like, stay away. I want to help, and it's just it's an odd situation, and it creates a lot of stress. So it's like just knowing how to cope and not cope, knowing how to like heal those parts of us. Because here's the thing, like, you can be in the same environment at home and have a completely, I mean, like, black to white different experience if you just were willing to try new methods and new tools.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that it's going to get 5% better. And you're right. There are these tools that when people get introduced to them, slap themselves in the face. You know, they do the face palm and go, that was there the whole time. And it only took me 30 minutes to learn how to do it.
Can I share like a small little example of what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one of our clients, I'm not going to get into like the whole thing of it, but broke up, married, had a kid, broke up, separated, and he was a drug addict, you know, somewhat mentally abusive, things like that, and they separated. And obviously she's had a ton of resistance of like being around him, right? It's like it hasn't felt safe to be around him. So teaching would be like, okay, do this, build, you know, borders and this, like this is how you stay safe, all that stuff. And I get that. I'm not diminishing any of that, but I'm like, look, at the end of the day, you want to feel safe, not with him, but what he's showing you is that there's just no safety in here. Mm-hmm. So he comes over, they take their girl for a walk, and she's walking with him by the park, and all of a sudden this thing comes over her, this feeling of like, I fucking hate this guy. That's the right, like, just I fucking hate this guy. And this is the tool, like a very, very simple tool, right? Is having awareness enough to notice that it's not you having that thought. It's just a sensation that is wanting to come through. So she allows the sensation to come through, and kind of like, you know, a duck with water. She's like water bead, and it just leaves. And at the same moment, she was so funny. She was like, we're walking and I see these ducks. And that's kind of like what sparked it. So she lets it go. Doesn't say anything.
Like feels right? Through the anger of it. Yeah.
Just process it, releases it. They walk for an hour. They get to her front door, and the guy breaks down, like full on tears, starts apologizing to her about how he's had so much shame and guilt for the way that he's treated them. Mm. And she's like, this is the thing that I've wanted for the entire time, was just to him to acknowledge that I wasn't crazy, and like didn't say a word to him. And this is what came out. And trust me, she's done all of the other ways to try to get that from him, and it never happened. And it happened like this in a moment. And that's the power that we all have, but we just don't. We keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting this person to show up differently. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
What do you know, I'm hearing you. I've had that experience. I mean, I remember one of the first like really pivotal transformational experiences I had, I sat down and I started asking my wife at the time how her day was going, and just asking her questions. And she breaks down crying because up until that moment, I never really, I hadn't been interested.
You never listened.
I never
may have asked the question, but you never listened.
I never listened. And so for the first time, I mean, it took 2 minutes of me asking questions before she breaks down crying, because she felt, and she was having an experience she'd never had before. And so it was one of those things where it really, it wasn't a technique I learned. It was just this is where I'm coming from a different place. Like I'm genuinely, all of a sudden, I got what it meant to have empathy and to be curious about someone else's experience. And then as soon as I got curious about their experience, my entire world shifted in a way that it could never go back, and I would never want to go back.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
I think we need to, most of us are still living in a way where we're responding to the world and we're not considering that the world is actually responding to us. So it's like the said a different way, it's like what you feel inside is the outer reflection that you're going to get. Yeah. So, like before, like Ilan said, with the mindset work, we used to tell people like, here's how you're going to go have that conversation. Here's where you're going to tell them. And that stuff works. It works great, right? Like it really does. It can really clear up a lot of stuff in the relationship, but it doesn't actually work the part and the pattern in your own system. If you work the part and pattern in your system, what you're essentially doing is you're actually liberating energy from the body, and the body naturally reorganizes, and it always reorganizes towards well-being. Always. If you think about like even in the physics, whether we're talking about form or energy or space, everything is moving towards neutrality, like our planet, right? Like everything is in this harmonious balance that we seem to be knocking out of. And right now it's like, we could consider this event as a way of like going back towards neutrality. We even talk about recessions, like it's a correction. We always say like if things are correcting, it's neutralizing. So it's really important to understand that it doesn't take intelligence to neutralize it. If you start using intelligence and how to do that, then you're saying, I have a view of what that looks like, and I'm going to try to do that, versus allowing for the natural intelligence that lives in all things, the God state, God intelligence, to take care of it by itself. The only thing I have to do is actually fully participate in what's happening right now. Right? Said another way, be fully present with what's so, instead of like everything we've been talking here, coping and trying to figure it out and getting around it. It's like the more you intervene, the slower the process. And again, like just using this time right now where it's like it's too big for anybody to intervene in what's happening. Like I even wonder, like, how do they get to the point where they're like, okay guys, it's safe to go outside now, after all the foundation of what they built and all the fear that they've put into everyone's psyche? Who's going to be like, cool, thanks president, we're free of virus, and it takes one person to start it all up again until everyone's to some, whatever the percentages are. And then the other thing I want to say, like, even from the mass media perspective, right, with what's happening, they said that 86% of people that are dying, I just saw this yesterday, 86% of people that are passing have some other related health condition. Most of it is people with diabetes, some heart condition, something like that. So it's like, for the most part, this is really not that deadly of a virus, no more than anybody else who would get sick that has some immunocompromised thing. That should give, I hope, a lot of people solace. And it should also give a lot of people a kick in the ass that it's like, it is not in alignment to be, some people are just born immune suppressed too. They can't help that. But for most people, especially in this country, it's lifestyle. Lifestyle is shit. We should demand more of ourselves in terms of our personal alignment and health. We should demand more of companies to provide things that allow for circumstances to be in alignment. And I really hope when we come out of this thing that people become aware of that, because this is not going to be the last pandemic or the last global event that's coming. This is a virus. We're going to deal with conditions of the weather during our lifetimes, and that's going to affect the entire planet over and over again. So it's like, until we all learn how to come together, have compassion for each other, start living in more alignment, not only within ourselves, but externally, I think we're only going to see more and more of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I see a part of the population waking up and realizing, oh, I've been outsourcing my health to doctors who actually can't help me. Oh, I'm actually responsible for my own health. I've got to do that now. And people, I think, are also realizing that they don't know how to do it. There's a lot of, different opinions on how to be healthy. I imagine that 95% of most people who are experts are in agreement, and they disagree about 5% and tend to focus on that 5% where they disagree. But I think I like to think it's a wake-up call. So like I see a divergence, as always. Half the you'll say half and half the population is going, fuck, I'm going to get my life in order. Like, I'm putting together right now a guide for people to boost their immune system, like really simple things to take responsibility for their own health, things that are very specific to what's happening right now. And I hope it spreads like wildfire. And I hope anyone who's doing the same thing is going to get out there. But then I'm also hearing people begging for vaccine. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we need a fucking vaccine. It's like, well, not, and I get careful in this because anytime I bring this up, people are like, oh, you don't believe in vaccines. I'm like, no. Vaccines are one tiny piece of the plan for living a long time. It is a really cool piece of technology that was designed. I believe that it is over. People have put it on a pedestal. Like they think it's more effective than it actually is. It's not as effective as it is, and people like to point at certain things, but that's a different conversation. But when I hear people going, oh, all we need is the vaccine, I go, uh-oh.
Yeah.
The fucking point.
Yes.
And this is, I don't get angry too much about too many things, but this is one of those things where I want to call people a twit and hit them over the head with a stick.
Totally.
And go, that you're the fucking problem. Like that's strong. The way you're thinking is the fucking problem.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's this divergence overall. If half get the point and go, that's good. That's good. That's going to pull everybody up, I think.
I think that number is a lot smaller. Sorry, bro. I think that number is a lot smaller, to be honest.
Oh, it's not half.
Well, from a spiritual perspective, I think we may have talked about this before, but I think it's worth mentioning. Not my studies. Ken Wilber, way smarter of a guy than me, talks about like the next stage of consciousness evolution, which is like integral, right? Meaning, we won't get into all the spiritual parts, but let's say 5% of the planet right now is living at an integral level.
Yeah. And
by studies of just looking at the past, like when like mass movement happens on the planet and like conscious awakening, it takes about 10%. So it's like and it's funny because we're living in very prophesized times right now.
Yeah.
And like we talk about this all the time with our clients. I'm like, it's literally like we're living through the Bible.
Yeah.
There's fires in Australia, locusts in Africa. There's a plague going all over the world. And right now is Passover, and Passover is, the Jews leaving Egypt, and there's the 7 plagues. And one of them is a virus, right? It's like, and locusts and fires, like it is the same shit. It's the craziest fucking ironic thing ever. And these next 5 years are really in like these books that prophesize these very smart and intelligent societies that prophesize this time, all talk about these 5 years as being like the most important 5 years on planet Earth. So I don't think it's a coincidence at all. A lot of people have felt into 2020 and thought that like really drastic things were going to happen. And again, we think like, wow, this is so drastic. I mean, it's just drastic because we're all at home. But like we're choosing that. There's no police outside my door right now with a gun telling me to stay inside.
That's you. And there are places that are.
Oh, there are. Yeah, I know. But I'm saying like for us personally, and I actually don't know that that's exactly true. I'm sure there's like that, but there hasn't been like violent protests. I don't think in any country that they're like, we're inside, we don't want to be. Fuck
no. But I know like Israel, for example, they have military personnel outside.
Sure, but that's because Israel, everybody's military, so it's easy to get personnel. But like nonetheless, I mean, whether that is or that isn't, like overall, it's a pretty peaceful transition into this kind of situation. Like if you would have thought 2 months ago, you're like, under what conditions would everybody be under house arrest? You wouldn't have imagined this. And you certainly wouldn't have imagined it without violence. So it's interesting. Again, like I think we're being thrown a bit of a softball here. And I really, really hope most people take the opportunity to pay attention to that. I hope government is not the same. I hope people see that it's like government's not showing up for you. I don't know about you guys, like no stimulus check has hit my bank account yet. Like there's a lot of people who really fucking need that money right now. Those people genuinely believe in government that are going to support them. The federal government's doing fuck all for the most part. I mean, I'm sure they're doing something, but it's like not the kind of response you would hope to see from people, from a entity that's supposed to be supporting and protecting people. So it's like right now, I've always thought that if we were going to transition to an enlightenment period, that would involve us learning what self-governance means. And that really needs to be defined more clearly in society about what that looks like. And I do think this is an opportunity to kind of like step into that. It's like, hey, we cannot wait for anybody to solve these problems. We cannot wait for governments to move on climate change. We cannot wait and trust that the medical community, because they wore white lab coats for 50 or 60 years, we have nothing but incredible amounts of evidence that they are paid off and have like false prophecies and give you bad information. And it's like, again, even with vaccines, I'm like, why, when there's so much distrust in that environment, why would you trust them on this one thing? Like, oh, this is the thing they got right. Totally right. Let's not ask any questions.
Well, this is why when I talk to
that makes
people,
no
I
sense.
go, and they start talking about how much they trust the government for this and that. I go, okay, what's your industry? What do you do for a living? Okay, you're an expert at that thing. How well the government, you interact with the government in regard to your job in some way, or they do something similar.
Yeah,
How good do they do that job?
Hmm.
And everybody always goes,
they suck.
they're shit.
Yeah.
They suck.
Worst.
I'm like, okay. So do you think that they're doing a better job in the other industries? And I go,
Great question.
It is a great question.
speeding up timelines. This speeding up the timeline, talking about stages of development, Ken Wilber, spiral dynamics, that whole thing, tier 2 consciousness.
Yep.
Probably lost everybody just now.
Yeah, that's okay.
But a certain percent, basically, there are predictable stages of development of human consciousness, and it's in the stage of that development is easily spotted and externalized. So the way that people are living their lives, if you've been through that stage of development, you can look back and go, oh, of course, that person, that's the way they are because they haven't learned this other thing yet.
Yeah.
So, or let go of this other thing yet. And so you're saying 5% are, when I think about somebody who's at a tier 2 consciousness, thinking at an integral level where they're really the only people who are they're the most suited people to be able to see the bigger picture and see the micro to the macro. And
Really?
that's making up 5%. And what we need to solve any problems that we're having, because they're global at this point, they always have been, but they're more obvious now, is that we need that integral mindset, that ability to consider more in an expanded view. 5% of the population are there. Does this situation speed that up and bump a lot of people who are riding the edge of moving into tier 2 consciousness? Does that bump them in there?
Can I just point out one thing, Guy? You can go into a lot more, but I just want to point out, like, notice who the virus is going after.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, look at us, for example, right?
Yeah.
We're on here, we do a lot of personal development work, but inside of that, we got awakened to, like, this is a gift of a life. The relationships I have are a gift. The things that I do for work can be a gift. Like, I can choose to do the things that I'm passionate about. We treat our bodies like a temple for the most part, right? Like, we feed it good fuel, we exercise, like, I'm not saying enlightened ones, but like of that level, right? Like, you perceive life in a very different way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's externalized. Are you living a lifestyle where you wake up happy to attack the day and you have self-care and then you enjoy the work you do, and then when you're done at the end of the day, you're not drained, you're just having your day. It was a great day.
So here's my question. Someone who is obese, I'm talking like morbidly obese, has diabetes, has smoked their entire lives, has destroyed their liver from drinking. Like, you telling me that those people have these kind of level thoughts? No. Right? Like, they
generally not.
They don't love their life. They've been abusing their body for decades.
Always exceptions to the rule.
Always. I'm not saying like this for everyone, but I'm just saying, like, look at the people who are leaving the planet at this time due to this virus have had dis-ease in their body, the majority of them, in one way, shape, or form. Now, that dis-ease didn't get created last Tuesday.
No.
That dis-ease has been happening for decades.
Yeah, they've been rolling the dice for a long time. For a long time,
because of just a type of outlook of the world and a type of thinking about life, right? So it's like, to me, and I'm not saying this is like prophecy or blah, 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 but like, it feels very that we're pulling this cap off of just a certain frequency of thought and energy that has been here in humanity and on Earth. and there's not like Darwinism, survival of the fittest shit. I'm not like, but I'm just saying it feels like we're making space for something else new to arise.
And the numbers reflect that. And the numbers reflect that. 9 out of 10 people are in that situation are the ones that are getting affected the most, you know?
And that's what I'm saying. Like, it feels to me like there's this innate, it's going to sound weird, to this thing that's blind and invisible and, you know, has no mind. It's like, it seems fairly intelligent in the way that it's,
Right.
you know, somehow, like, I'm not saying it's choosing, but like somehow affecting a certain type of demographic. So
Well, I wouldn't say the virus is its own thing. This is just this entire thing is an organism.
Exactly.
And what has the intelligence is the organism.
Yeah.
That has created this way of detoxification.
Yeah.
We're detoxing just the way a person has to detox their body, whether it be voluntary or involuntary.
Totally.
Involuntary mean, you know, we call that being sick. Yeah. And people, we're going through an involuntary global detoxification. And, you know, that I going back to neutrality, this is the planet's way of finding neutrality is the way I see it.
Yeah.
Well, kind of like I've been saying this a lot, you know, for those of us who've done plant medicine work, you know that in like the shamanic world, when you're purging, even women who get pregnant, you know, right, your first trimester, you're purging a lot. Why are you purging? To cleanse the body, to basically prepare the vessel. So on the outside, to the human mind, it's like, oh, that's nasty. But in the experience and the spirit of it inside, it's like, whoa, this is getting well, right? And that's why shamans always say you're not getting sick, you're getting well. So it's like we're getting well, but on the collective, I couldn't agree more. And what we call viruses to me is a part of a very elaborate communication network that speaks to our DNA and informs the body how to be prepared for environmental shifts and impacts that are occurring on our planet. And I think that's truly what's happening. And that's not just coming from me, that's coming from lots and lots of smart people. So, but to go back to what you said, right? Like, this is about disillusionment. Like even for us, right, you're very aware, but you get caught, right? There was fear, you look at the numbers and you start realizing, oh, okay, I'm looking at this, but there's a part of me that's still looking at it for a reason. It's looking for that safety, it's looking for that well-being, and it's doing it in disillusionment. I'm not actually getting that from this. Even people who want to be informed, it's like, oh, if I'm informed, I'll figure out how to keep myself safe. And it's like, if the virus is coming, the virus is fucking coming. Like you can't see it. I don't give a shit what you know about this virus. It's going to get you. Like you can go clean 99 out of 100 boxes that come to your door, but if box number 100 has a little speck that you missed, bitch, you're getting that virus.
I brought groceries home and we're wiping them down. I'm going, and then we have like produce.
Yeah.
And I go,
psychosis.
What am I going to do? Fucking Lysol my produce?
Yeah.
And not only that, it's porous. It's already got it. Like, what the fuck are we doing?
Exactly. If you're going to get it, you're going to get it. So my point is that there's a reason for mass disillusionment. I wrote a thing about how the Holocaust, Chernobyl, and coronavirus have a lot in common in terms of like there's a moment of disillusionment where something is happening on the planet that we say isn't happening. So like when Chernobyl happened, like the USSR tried to cover it up. Hundreds of thousands of people were, you know, injured or dying. And the people saw this. And anyway, the information came to me, and the president of the USSR at that time said that the event that took down communism was Chernobyl. Like that was the beginning of the end because the people rose up out of disillusionment. So for me, that's happening on a mass scale right now. It's like we've been living in the fake news era, but it's like, no, there's always been fake news. It's all propaganda. It's all a narrative. Now it's just like, as awful as I don't enjoy watching Donald Trump constantly call it fake news, he's right. There's no real narrative. It's just made up biases. So if during this time, again, that's my point, they caused so much fear, so much. The numbers are not going to be what they said. Even right now, yesterday, Fauci said, oh, sorry, we said it was going to be 500,000 people. No, sorry, it's only 60,000. Right? Like they're already. Dude,
every time that guy talks, I want to punch him in the throat. because we'll never be shaking hands again. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? Yeah. If somebody needs to be taken outside, it's that guy.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's people that want to fuck him. So
yeah. But here's the thing, right? Hired goon, and like you said, your thinking is a problem, but it's like it's not. Even that is not really the problem because spiral dynamics. Those people are stuck in a certain. Well, not stuck. Those people are at a certain level of consciousness that deals with threat in a certain way. And for people like, in the red band, you know what I mean? Like the power thing, that's how you deal with everything. More power, more power, more power. So
Yeah.
part of what I would like to see is this is going to hopefully be like an unveiling of a lot of social disillusionment that people live under because of media. And hopefully people claiming back power, which ultimately means more power for the people, more self-governance, more community organizing, a lot of stuff, and even food, right? Like, I hope people realize after this, like, you need to be growing food locally. You cannot get it delivered from Mexico and China and stuff like this, because in a situation like this, we're fucked.
Yeah.
Fucked, Like, this wouldn't be an issue at all. This is a non-issue if we were all living in community right now. Farming our own food, raising our own animals, already self-contained. People would get sick, you're right, but you wouldn't be relying on government to send fucking resources so you can feel like you can live.
Yeah, I've been in, building community conversations for years. We've been in the conversation for years. And I've witnessed, it's like everyone, and you have a few friends shopping for properties and like, oh, what do you think about this? It's been going on for years. And now it's like, okay, let's fucking really do this.
Sure.
Yeah. Real estate's about to get cheap. We're looking at third quarter. Stack some cash if you're making it, and go snag some up. And my experience of anything like that is there always has to be the first person or first family that makes the move and says, okay, I planted the fucking flag.
Yeah.
We got some goats and a garden. Who's coming with us?
Yeah. If you get the goat, I'll get the sheep.
Perfect.
But I'll tell you what, like, when you asked, like, what has it been like? So I was forced to move out of my house. Not really. It was kind of like we were moving in that direction anyway. And this just kind of, again, accelerated it like it has for everything else. And I moved in with Mandy and my wife's parents. And so there's 8 people living in the house together here. So my reality went from like enclosed space. That's why I'm literally working out of a closet space right now. And it's been wonderful, to be honest. Not upsetting at all. I mean, there's certainly times I want like my own space at the end of the night that I don't really have, because right now I'm sharing a bedroom with my wife and our kid. So his crib is in there, small bedroom, like he's sleeping in the same room as us. And but what immediately became apparent to me when I moved in here was like how challenging we've accidentally made our lives, because we all want to feel good about ourselves, and we've been told that feeling good, it means you've achieved something. And to achieve something means you got to do it on your own, and you got to show everybody that you're a fucking go-getter and you're not a loser, and you achieve, and you can raise kids on your own and they're good kids, right? And all that shit. We can keep bringing it back to the loser.
Not again! Not again!
You're triggering me, guy.
Yeah, sorry, buddy. I'll just call me later and I'll support you with presents.
Thank you.
So my point is like, we moved in here, and for those of you who have children, and I know a lot of you guys are at home now with kids, raising them on your own, trying to school them. It's a huge challenge, but to be here and like have them around family and have everyone just a little bit here, a little bit there. And like his growth has been exponential since we moved into this house, like shocking amounts of growth, right? Because of it. And I'm like, what the fuck have we done? That we've all moved away from our families, went and got degrees, try to build our own businesses, right? Like we talk about this all the time. Like, why are we all building coaching businesses? All our friends doing the same shit, instead of just like connecting our powers and like building like a really big movement, because everyone has the same heart intention anyway. And we're all like, oh, look at me and doing our own. I'm like, fuck that. Like, I don't know how I would move out of this house and go raise a child on my own with my wife again. It's like that. It's like that severe. I'm like, if I don't move into community, I don't know that I can move right now, because I don't want to live in a house with just me and Mandy raising the baby. It actually feels like I would be taking something away from him. So it's become even more important to me in this experience. I'm like, we got to stop making things so fucking hard for ourselves.
I'm laughing because I've been thinking about just getting a house by myself.
I get it. But look, it matters.
Not. It's not one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, I got to do this. But actually, the thought I was having is, I want a house by myself, but right down the street, I want the house with all my. I want the neighborhood. I know. Yes, I want the community.
It makes a big difference. We moved into this place in New York with Fanny. We were super young. We were 26, 27 when we bought this house. It's a big house, and we were like in this cul-de-sac community, and everyone around us was easily at least 20, if not 30 years older. So we were the youngest kids on the block. Like everyone had older kids that were in, high school and things like that. And while I loved this house and I love like the area, I didn't realize how much community was missing for me until we started having the houses turn over and families with young kids buy on our street. And now my kids, like now with Corona, it's a little bit harder. It's actually become a little bit of a challenge, but like we got kids on our street biking to each other's houses, playing basketball with each other, going to other kids' backyards and just playing. And like, I don't have any worry.
Do they play basketball but keep social distancing?
No. Now there's no basketball.
Yo, bro, I got you. Post up.
It's a make-believe basketball.
We had to do that to that one. But even like it's tough for kids, right? Because like the social distancing thing, they don't really understand. So it's actually been a little bit of a tough slog. But like, dude, we're at the center of the cul-de-sac. We put out like plastic chairs on the center of the cul-de-sac, and different neighbors will come and we'll sit like 6 feet apart and just hang out.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, now I've said this to Guy, I wanted to move to California for so long. And now that I'm here and I'm watching my kids have this and like we have the community, it's changed everything for me. It's one of the reasons we're redoing our kitchen, because I was like, after 10 plus years of living here, I was like, you know what? I'm good. Like we can chill here. So community is huge. And I think now more than ever, for those of you guys that are out there on your own, like I know people are quarantining by themselves, just because you're alone doesn't mean you have to be lonely. I'll say that again. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you have to be lonely. Lonely is a thing that we deal with. Again, like the internal, lonely is a part. You've felt lonely in a concert also. Like you just, lonely is something you feel regardless of the environment. Reach out. Like we have Zoom meetings all the time. Like we've thrown virtual dance parties for my friends' birthdays, and I've figured out how to stream my DJ sets and like have people. Yeah, I think that like now is the time where we can get creative and get connected and do all of those things. We really can create community in a very unique and unusual way that we've never been able to, because we have to get creative. And I think there's a cool part to that.
Yeah, agreed. Let's wrap it up here. Where do people find out more about what you're up to? They want to connect with your community. What do they do?
I'll give you Ilan's
home
address.
We're super exclusive, and you can't find out anything more about us.
Ilan's home address is, you can go knock on his door, just look for the cul-de-sac with the chairs outside.
Can you imagine people are like Google imaging, like, I know I can find this.
I can find this fast. So really simple, guys. I mean, something I think that we can offer that adds immediate value is a lot of the work that we do, we didn't get to talk about it too much here. It really starts getting into the depths of how to reprogram these deep ingrained unconscious programs. And it really starts with sensations in the body. So I have recorded a few meditations that I highly urge you doing, specifically the 30-minute one. It actually takes you, we call it an active meditation, because you're actually in a practice within your own substrate. And we actually show you how to work through processes. This has nothing to do with understanding our mental or process. So if you go to satoriprime.com, that's our basic website or our homepage and stuff like that. But if you go to satoriprime.com/meditate, you can go get access to those 2 meditations and a bunch of other really amazing personal and spiritual development resources. And that would be a very good starting point with us for sure.
And I would say if they like podcasts, then Personal Development Without the Fluff podcast is pretty cool.
Yeah. Personal development without the fluff. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Had a blast.
Was it fun with the three-way?
The three-way was perfect. It's my first remote three-way.
You never forget your first.